So let's have a prayer and we'll get right into this. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege and joy of being together. For those who are with us online, welcome and blessings to you as well. And for those who will be watching this later, blessings to you as well. We asked during this time that we focus on chapters 1 and 2 of Veith's book, Embracing Your Lutheran Identity. And we're going to take a look at some history. But Lord, bless us as we discern this history and see what you're trying to say through this book. In Jesus' name, amen.
Bobby, for a second, could you come help us get this started?
Oh, yeah, I'm just running around. I'll be right back.
I got everything going.
I know,
Why not Carrie? Thank you. Two each. No, just Joe. That's all. Yeah, for you. That's it. There's snacks too. Pastor just moved to help somebody else with the TV. So what a process.
Yeah.
We're going to be missing two, my son and daughter-in-law.
Oh.
They're 5-year-old. Well, he's 5 years old this past week. Grandson, instead of a party, he said, I want to go to the water park. So they left yesterday and went to Galveston to the water park. And spent the night. So.
Well, that's nice.
I opted not to go.
I hear you.
I didn't want to spend all day at the water park. So.
Thank you. She knows I know she appreciates it. I don't know why. I don't know why. Then I'll be officially broke. Yeah, tell me about it.
Okay.
Mine just came home from college and she's got these extensions. And she's like, well, these don't work. And I need another set like the boyfriend wants. And I'm like,
Okay, everybody have a book?
Just no.
Did you all have a chance to explore this book a bit? Not a hard read.
He's
Yes.
a good author.
Good
Yeah,
author.
and I looked at him on YouTube, and the words are not the same as this.
Okay, I printed this out for you so you can have copies of this.
Yeah, but they're not the same as the one I've done on YouTube.
Well, I can't do anything about that. You know, this is right. This is from the Lutheran
And
Service
that's just on
Bill.
the first two paragraphs, but the rest of it is completely different.
Yeah. Well, actually, we have taken some hymns and we've Lutheranized them in the years.
But it's completely different meaning though.
Isn't that funny?
And the one I found on YouTube was just like, oh,
I'm gonna
that's
explore that.
beautiful. I listened to it like 3 times.
I'm doing something next year with my confirmation kids where AI is helping with this, where I ask for 10 heretical, according to Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, songs that are popular in praise worship services today. And then I want the kids to show me where they're wrong with that. And it's so cool because with AI, you just put it in there, tell it what you're looking for. And then it says, here's why I chose this based on article, whatever, of Lutheran Confession. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh yeah. But because I want the kids to be able to discern the meaning of the words and how important our hymnal is. Like if there's certain books you take with you, you know, when the fire happens, photo albums, without a doubt, I get that. Hopefully you've digitized most of that by now. But the Bible, the hymnal, don't overlook the hymnal. The hymnals are theology. That's why when I go to different churches, when I go to Roman Catholic, I was at a few Roman Catholic churches recently with Sonia's family, and I pulled the little what do they call it? What do they call that thing that it changes the propers? The little booklet that shows me all the worship services. I can't remember what it's called, but I went through it and I thought this is so nice, but man, I can't imagine how much that costs to do. because those are soft bound books and they're pretty thick like this. And you better, if they get, it's wild. Like I'm so glad we went to overheads, because at the end of worship services, we would look in the trash and we would see all the worship services in the trash afterward. We wondered, why are we printing this stuff up anymore? But the problem is people don't have stuff to go home with that reminds them anymore. So we've lost that. So we got to figure out, there's a dynamic. But anyway, let's get into this. This is really good stuff, good history. And we're going to get right into the questions at hand. And you will find that they're a little shorter in some ways. Maybe. Are you going to go? Nothing works for me. You're on screen sharing, stop share. But why is it? Oh, do I have to do this?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that's so goofy.
We're
Okay.
covering chapter 1 and 2.
Where's AI when you need it?
Yeah, we're doing 1 and 2. Yeah, no, you might be asking for AI to lead you here.
We're not really working yet. Okay.
Is this?
Happy Mother's Day.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So you read about in the first chapter, it's the early church and you. And it talks about the age of the early church and that there was a lot of tolerance. The Greco world was intellectually very sophisticated. They were willing to put up with a lot of different things because they didn't want to dictate morality. The gods they had weren't really being worshipped at the time. They were just stories and fables and fairy tales to be that. But what'd you find here? How is this religious tolerance similar to that of our culture today?
Virtually, for those in power, so many of them want to tolerate virtually everything.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Seems that way. Like we saw that with this whole. We're learning more about this gang member or whatever, and as you learn more about that, it was all like, oh, this guy's innocent, and then it was like, well, maybe he's not so innocent as we thought. And now what do we do with this? And you see that the people who went all in on it, they're like, oh my goodness, how do we find ourselves here? And how do we get out, gracefully? And it's this premise that this victim underclass, like anybody who's a victim is seen as first by some people as the hero. They just have that in their mind that if someone's a victim, they're powerless, they're the hero. And so they will go all in on stuff like that. And a lot of those people rise to leadership for some reason. I don't know, maybe because they're so used to pleasing people and falling into that trap, making people feel special. But it's a real problem because they're willing to jump on anything where there's a potential victim, forgetting about all the other victims. Okay, so someone doesn't get their rights, whatever they're supposed to, due process, whatever that's supposed to be. I don't even know if we're a citizen or not. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's kind of unclear, kind of hazy. But what about all the rights of the people that were affected by people coming to this country that had crime happen on them and stuff like? What do we do with that? Do we not talk about that? Is that not? But and so there's one group talking about that primarily, and there's the other group talking about this group over here, and they're just doing this. And those are our politicians. And we would hope that they would have a little more like groundedness and say, listen, we've looked at it from different, viewpoints, but it seems like they're all in one way or the other way, and they want you to fall in one way or the other way, and there's no gray in between. There's no like, hey, hey, what can we do here? And it's interesting to watch because that's the culture we live in today, which is not grounded, but it's trying to find grounding. It's always going to try to find grounding. But if there's no grounding, it's just going to be shifting sand all the time. And that's what we're seeing.
It's really testing our Constitution and the division of powers. I mean,
when you have circuit judges and things like that, can it stop the whole country? Sure. It makes you wonder why did I not become a judge? Like I would tell my kids, you should be a judge. They're more powerful than the president of the United States. And you don't have to deal with it's like being an anesthesiologist. Nobody wants to do that because you got the insurance rates, right? It's nicer to be a nurse practitioner because then you don't have to deal with all the insurance stuff, right? Is that how that works? Or is it
Yes,
still, yeah,
generally, I mean, they've got high malpractice insurance, but hey, they put people to sleep and they control their pain, so.
I know.
It's a sweet gig.
And playing with that chemical
200,000.
stuff.
Yeah,
Mm.
but yeah, nurse
For the
practitioner
nurses,
generally
yeah.
doesn't typically.
I'll tell you what, I'm used to, anytime that I have like I've been to dentist a while, I gotta go, but when I go, it's usually the laughing gas comes at me and I'm thinking, I can see why they lock this stuff up. Because for 5 minutes, you're as high as a kite, and then after that, you're gone, it's done. And I'm like, this is amazing, this is so amazing, like, what is this stuff? And yeah, just how they monitor it, they got all those settings in there, I'm like, holy moly. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever had any?
No,
Oh.
Not since I was a kid.
Laughing gas is good stuff,
But
man.
I didn't think it was great.
Give
I
me
was
a
like
local.
freaking out because I don't like the losing control
I
of
think
going to
girls
sleep.
didn't even-
Oh, no, give me more.
So I started
Dr.
getting-
Morris,
I
send
do
me
it, I
more,
do it,
man.
I
Like,
let it go.
if you feel any pain, Jeff, I don't know, I'm hearing
I'm
you,
not
like,
like,
yeah, there must be pain.
"Ooh,
Bring
let
me
me
more.
I've never had to.
But that's amazing. Like, it's just amazing to me, this ether just goes through you and then comes back out again.
That was,
And yet when I had surgery, they gave me morphine and that did nothing for me. I'm one of those people that I'm like, I still felt all the
they
pain,
have
so
a
they
high
try to
pain
find something else.
tolerance.
Morphine is
Yeah.
Not me, but the other three of my pals.
But it was, anyway, so very similar. I don't think we disagree on that at all. Okay. Nice. Am I missing? Oh, do you think that the American Constitutional Republic could meet the same fate as the Roman Republic? Some observers refer to today's globalism as an economic and civilization empire. Do you agree?
Yes, and yes.
Did you all understand the argument about globalism here? That when you have globalism, you don't really have any governing authorities looking over how the business are operating because they're operating under a bigger umbrella. And so sometimes they can do things and they can even change cultures because they say, if you want our company there, here's what you have to do. And so they go into countries even and sometimes bring that culture and dump it because of globalism. Apple has power like that. Google has power like that. Meta has power like that. They have huge power in these companies when they go in. They can dictate a lot of things when they go. And so that's why it's so important. I got in a huge discussion during Confirmation Sunday about, and I thought it was healthy, but about AI. That Christians need to be doing that. They need to get on AI because if the algorithms are only reading what non-Christians are shoving in there, guess what's going to come out? And so when someone's looking for something, they're going to find. So I'm telling Christians, play with this stuff. It's kind of fun. It's free. And I bring my Lutheran Church Missouri Synod stuff in wherever I can. And I get a lot of AI little discussions where like, oh, this is really interesting. We haven't heard this before. And I'm thinking, yeah.
I mean, what do you type in?
Something about predestination, how I use predestination. The prompt, I'll say, write something about, I'll show you, I'll send you some prompts and show you what I do with things. But it's amazing how intuitive it is. It just figures things out. It
I
just,
thought it was interesting that the new Pope, he said AI is one of the big challenges going forward.
it's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. It's not going to go away. It's like the internet. It's not going away. When people say, oh, I don't like AI, I'm like, okay, so now what? Okay, the train is going. What are you gonna do? Are you just gonna keep poo-pooing the train going by like Thoreau did in Walden Pond? Like Christians, and I'm not great at this stuff. I'm not, but I see the value of getting my voice on there because it's hearing what we have to say. Our theology of the cross, that's very unusual, that God works through suffering, that he works through the lonely moments, he works through darkness, that's how God chooses to work. A lot of Christians don't believe that. They're more into glory theology. So things like that, when I put it in, it says, this is really interesting stuff. It'll stop me. I'll say, I haven't heard this before. I'm thinking, oh boy, this is good. You're going to keep hearing it. Because as it hears it, then it will help other people when it sends out stuff, ideas. It will
So
send
you have to be
out.
careful what you put in it because I work for Hewlett Packard and we create storage for AI and work with NVIDIA who makes the AI software. And we are not allowed to put any kind of company questions into the regular AI because it stores it and keeps it track of what you've asked.
Yeah, and
So
who you
we're
are.
only allowed to do HPE AI,
Yeah.
which only certain individuals in our company have it right now. but we're all having to be trained on AI.
Yeah, because they're gonna expand that technology for you all. What people are doing, because you guys are a server company, you'll buy the AI already prefabbed. And that will be your closed AI for your system governance. And if they want to add stuff in, they'll bring it in. They'll be certain, and that's how it's gonna have to
But if you
work.
try to chat like ChatGPT,
Yep.
AI, it like alarms you on the computer, like, don't. like,
And see, for me,
You're not
it's like,
allowed.
welcome.
Like it
Bring
already
it on.
has, it already has like
Okay.
sensitivity in my computer.
So I think we're always, Ronald Reagan said it, we're just one generation away from falling into tyranny. And I think that we've gotten really complacent as Americans because we've got privilege of oceans. I mean, the Atlantic and the Pacific are huge privileges until hypersonic missiles started making an emergence in places like Iran and North Korea and places like that, where they can send a missile so fast, we cannot stop it. That's why Trump wants to build the dome and stuff like that, to do what they do in Israel to try to stop this stuff before it comes. It's getting really dicey. My dad said when Trump was president the first time, he said Space Force was one of the greatest things he did, because that's where the war is being had. That's what's happening. That's where it's happening. It's not going to happen on. It's going to be satellites being put out. It's going to be blackouts, brownouts. And that's how wars are going to be played. And then the people that have the technology, they'll be able to destroy everything.
I contend that our enemy, if wanted to create chaos in this country, would be to destroy the GPS system. We'd be lost. We wouldn't know where to go, how to go here from A to B.
We get a dose of that every time we run into a hurricane.
Right.
We cannot get our cell phones to work correctly. We lose a lot of capability, and
Not even a hurricane.
we're exposed to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, just electricity and Houston.
It's anyway. But as a republic, we got to be very careful, and we're also a bastion for the world, because we're one of the only working Republican democracies. I mean, we're very unusual with our freedom of speech. That's a very unusual feature of our country against the world. The things I say here in the United States, I could not get away with in Canada as easily. I kid you not. If I was to talk about Jesus being the only way to salvation in Canada, and that was on the radio, I would probably have someone call me in, and I would probably have to go through some cultural, I don't know, some
Sensitivity training.
retraining, whatever Orwell called it. I forget.
Re-education camps.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's because that's where it was going back even when I left in 2002. That's where it was in 2001. And I knew it was coming, and now it's that way. Who's like Jordan Peterson? He's a famous Canadian sociologist. He's been brought up on charges in Canada because he's not willing to buy into the transgender stuff and things like that. And they brought him up on charges.
I don't think he's Christian, which is interesting.
He is now.
He is now.
He is now. He became Christian through a lot of soul searching and a lot of C.S. Lewis kind of going after it, not letting it go by, being a true scholar and saying, I will explore this because people I admire have told me this is true. And so Jordan Peterson gave it a real good look, and he said, wow, it is true.
Okay.
And Christianity can hold up to all of that stuff. It just drives me nuts when Christians give up. Science is not as smart. Scientists aren't as smart as they think they are. What's the attraction of authoritarian form of government? Some thinkers on both the left and the right are calling for the replacement of like what you see in Columbia University. These people who want Hamas, they want Antifa, and they want these women who want to be, they want to wear the burqa, they want the beehive outfit, they don't want to have any rights. I don't know what are you talking about? Like, why is that so calling? I remember when Eric Clapton, he left being a Christian from being a Christian, and he became a Muslim. Do you remember that?
I know he's a Christian.
Yeah, he was one time a Christian, and he became a Muslim, and people wondered why. And his reason was, I think, the same a lot of people have. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people want to go toward those? Like,
They don't want to think for themselves.
yeah, it's the freedom to not make a decision. It's the freedom to never be
That's not
wrong.
freedom.
They call that freedom.
It's not freedom.
I know. But you see, it's this kind of news speak. Like it's
Yeah.
by having someone tell me what to do, it frees me up to.
What I see is one of the biggest problems with most of the people that are coming here, at least from Central and South America, they're all used to socialist governments who take care of them from cradle to grave, and they expect the same thing when they get here.
Yeah, and the people who allowed them to come in expected to vote the same. That's all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. And unfortunately for them, that when you go in the second and third generation, people start getting a paycheck and seeing where their paycheck goes and all that, people start saying, wait a second now, what am I believing here? And because they finally get a chance to be free from the tyranny of government. And it takes a while though. It takes a while to get out of that mindset. You can imagine if your values are set by the age of 18 and you've been living in that system, it's hard to get out. Okay, but two groups refused to burn the incense, Jews and Christians. Why wouldn't Jews and Christians burn the incense to Caesar?
Exodus tells us.
It was just one day a year. Come on, guys, one day a year. Is it that big a deal? Can't you just for one day a year? Don't you follow a forgiving God? Won't God forgive you for this one day a year that you would burn incense to Caesar and claim Caesar as God? Just one day. Come on. Or do you want to burn? Or do you want to go to lawyers? What is it? Which one do you want? All you gotta do is just bow down. One incense, come on. You know what they're saying about you Christians? They're saying you're cannibals. They're saying that when you get together, you eat the flesh and you drink the blood of the Son of God still. You're cannibals. Is that what you want people to say about you? Just burn the incense, will you? That's exactly how it went down. So then Christians wouldn't burn the incense. And so that was going to be the death of Christianity, right? As you found out which ones. Okay, that one's not burned in. Come over here. All right. I buy lions. Here you go. Lions. What happened to Christianity because of that?
Well, it exploded into something else.
It's the craziest thing, isn't it? Because what are people looking for even today in religion, in their leaders, in what? What are they looking for? What?
Salvation.
Salvation, but they're looking for authenticity. They want something to be real.
I'd say it's more of that than anything.
And if these people are willing to not burn incense, knowing what's going to happen to them, if they're willing to go through all of that because they believe in something so unique, for a lot of people, that was pretty appealing because it was pretty empty culture. It was a video game culture before video games. It was people just enjoying life to the fullest and not worrying about consequences. You even have schools of thought that concern themselves with that. You had the Epicureans and the Stoics. These were two schools of thoughts that said, the Stoics were all about it's serious because what you do in the flesh and the spirit, they're combined and it hurts. So we need spirit. The Epicureans were over here saying, the spirit and the flesh, they're separate. Whatever you do in your flesh, no big deal. Just do spiritual stuff on spiritual stuff. Nice lie. And so you had these two thoughts, two schools. And they were formal schools, and the people chose what they liked, and it was okay to choose either one. And this is what Christianity was. There was no absolute truth because Rome was about all truths coming together as one. And so with this Christianity that said, no, this guy rose from the grave. This is unique to all the other ones. This was interesting stuff. Nobody else was willing to do it. What was it about Christianity that made so many followers of Christ in your church willing to die rather than renounce it? Just that, the authenticity. The saying, I'm even willing to give my life for this. It's that important. And they weren't just the poor people either. We'll get to that. Their culture is said to be hostile to Christianity. We even speak of Christians being persecuted, but the difficulties of Christians today are nothing compared to what Christians in the early church went through. I would say that's true and false. There are parts of the world where Christians are being persecuted in ways that are horrific, even by the standards of first century.
I've heard it said that there have been more martyrs like this century or whatever than any century before.
That's absolutely true. And right now there's more slaves. There's more slaves in this world than there were during the whole time of slavery for this nation. So it's amazing what people choose to put their flag in what hole, in what hill. And
And
But-
all the laws are just changing slowly and slowly, taking a little bit at a time away from us.
Oh, yeah. You see it really with pedophilia. We're seeing something really strange where they're talking about, oh, they got a new word for pedophiles now. It's minor
attracted person.
minor attracted person. Is that what it is?
I think so.
Yeah. And you're like, what? And now California just had a law where they were gonna get rid of anybody 16 and who was doing that. And there were people on Congress and Senate in California that stopped it, and they said, no, we don't wanna go that far. And then this whole Epstein thing, the Diddy thing, and that's part of it, is these are juveniles that were out there on the sex island where Epstein had. And we're seeing, well, we don't know what we're seeing. We're gonna see some stuff come out of that because we were promised that, and
There was an episode of Law and Order SVU several years ago where they caught this guy who was a pedophile and they had him there. And he's saying, we're the normal ones. We're gonna, you keep them
Yeah.
secret and try to. I remember when I watched at the time, it was before this started. It's like, and now whenever I hear stories like that, I remember that episode. It's like life imitating art.
yeah.
Just-
Don't be fooled. Law and Order, it always says this portrays nobody really, these are all fictional characters. It is nothing of the sort. It is so like, oh, this is right up button. But it is really good show and all the spin-offs, and that's part of my retirement plan. That's my bucket list, to sit down and watch Laws and Order. Because that was on when I was in college.
Haven't you
That's on
watched
your
it like?
bucket list?
Huh?
Haven't you watched them like 3 times
They're like-
already?
No, I've stopped watching Law and
There's
Order
like,
like after the
yeah,
first
there are
couple
like
seasons.
3 or 4. That's a lot of signs.
Yeah, stick to the pit with me.
Okay, how might a Christian today be asked to burn incense to the anti-Christian world?
Peer pressure.
Or the acceptance of they, them, what are your pronouns?
Abortion. Yeah, I don't,
What was yours? What was yours?
abortion,
Abortion, that's what I was saying. They were forcing people to
accept it.
accept it.
But the transgender stuff, the military just had to go through this, and how many lawsuits were coming from all sorts of crazy areas, like, and transgender stuff, like, I'm not a doctor, but supposedly, if you go from a male to a female, and now you've got an open wound in your body that is supposed to be your vagina. Your body's going to constantly want to close that opening in your body. That's what it wants to do. And so you're going to have to go every week to the hospital to make sure that it continues to keep the wound open. Your body doesn't choose to close it. I didn't know all this. I listened to Megan Kelly. She went through all this stuff with a bunch of people. And then you also, in transgender stuff, when you're given all the hormone blockers and all that stuff, they don't tell you that this will probably stop you from ever having an orgasm again in your life. They don't share that. And then they don't share how many people commit suicide after they go through all the surgeries, because that doesn't help any narrative either. It is, and they always go to this. Well, if you don't allow this to happen, then they're going to commit suicide. They've got this argument all planned out, and it's all just to scare you. That's all it's supposed to do.
The thing is, we're created all as unique individuals,
Mhm.
and more with all these medications out there. Different people react differently to different treatments and medications.
Well, even the splitting of the word sexes or gender. Okay, when I hear people say you should have that how many genders are there, I think, well, there's only 2 sexes. Oh no, that's not what people think when they talk gender. Gender is an identity thing where it could be very subjective and all over the place. And this is all kind of new. This is new stuff. And part of me is like, you're shoving this down my throat. And I'm always on this side. This is my side of me always. I've got thousands of years of history on my side. Why do I need to bend to you? Why don't you make your proof a little better? Like, why don't make your argument a little better than at the point of a gun or at trying to force me?
Well, they can't.
That's right.
I've heard stories of people who, like, they're adults now and they went through gender transition as a child, so it's actually not that new. But I've never, of those people, I've never heard one said, I'm glad I did it. They're all like, I wish I had never done it. I'm trying to reverse it. And they recount how they were pushed into it by teachers, counselors, parents. And
There are parts of
doctors.
there are parts of your development where if you impede that part of the development, you have missed that chance. And so there's hormone blockers and all that. This is why it's so dangerous, because that's a time that the kids' bodies are trying to really figure this stuff out and make the chemicals do correct. And now you've just distorted it. Now what? And all of Europe is getting out of this stuff. They're thinking this stuff is not helping anybody, and they're getting out, and we're going all in. It's the craziest thing. And so that for me, that's an incest thing. Buying into the whole sex whenever you want. It doesn't matter, it's just sex. That's a culture thing that's really taken over. I'm seeing a lot of commercials for young girls, young pretty girls that are taking some pill to stop their ovaries from working and all of this. And I don't know, I don't understand all this stuff, but and I'm thinking this is better than this helps me be me. I don't have to. It's basically the idea that I'm not beholden to anybody. I can choose to have my own sexual freedom. And I think that's the biggest lie. That's a guy that told you that lie, by the way. I'm going to be honest with you. And he's laughing his way to the bank. And they say that these stupid women, they're just saying that they want to have sex on demand. That's how guys think. But you know why? Because guys don't have the consequences that girls have. I'm going to be honest with you. So that's a great lie. That's a great lie. They sold women down the road. And many of the women who went that direction and thought that having sex with everybody they wanted, they'll come. And I don't hear too many of them say they were grateful they did that either, because you make an emotional attachment with every single person.
I think the instance is not just even these big things; it's the little things on a daily basis.
It sure is.
Even what you watch, what you listen to, that even these little things are the instance. You can see the big glaring.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. The little ones. Or being silent in the middle of some 1,000 cuts that are going around you, just being silent, because that's not, or thinking that's not a big deal. Sometimes I've done that in my life where I thought, oh, it's not a big deal, but in somebody's life it was. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't, and it's very humbling. Good. Why would Christianity be so attractive to those who had little status in Roman society?
All were equal under God.
Yeah, priesthood of all believers is pretty powerful. Yeah, and the body of Christ, that each part is essential. Like for my hand, the most important part of my hand is almost the smallest digit. It's my thumb. If I don't have my thumb, I'm kind of sunk. You can take away the other stuff, but I gotta have that. I gotta have my pincer. Yeah.
Combination.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Okay. Rome was a highly stratified society with a strict class system. No one associated with people outside their social status, period. And yet the evidence from the catacombs also shows that in the church, Christians of all classes interacted with one another. Why would Christianity have that effect? It's kind of the same answer, but
We're all one.
We're all one. We're all sinners.
yeah, this was a very unique mystery religion which came into Rome. Like all the other religions had certain people that were allowed in or certain people that were not allowed in. And Christianity was like, which blew people's minds. And how that could work. How does that work? Well, everybody gets on with the same mission. That's how it works. You got to be on the same mission. And it's about Jesus. And Jesus is big enough to bring all of our different cultures and different philosophies we grew up with and dump them at his feet. He's willing to bring us all together around him instead. I don't know anything else that does that. How are Christians falsely accused today?
What you said earlier, we're cannibals.
I hope they're not saying that about us much anymore.
Backward religion,
Backward.
restrictive,
Saying they're
polytheistic.
believing more and more in evolution instead of the creation.
Oh, evolution. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Don't get Pastor Muckle on that one.
Hypocrites.
Right.
I believe we're also about 10,000 years old away. Just in case you're curious about me, and I make no bones about it, I think you have to prove to me how it's so much older according to everything I'm seeing. And I'm willing to play that game. But my salvation and your salvation doesn't depend on that. It shouldn't, because I can't prove my way. You can't prove your way. That's how that conversation usually goes. Because I can't go back in time. You can't go back in time. We can't see exactly what went
Except
on.
when you talk to the dinosaurs at the Museum of Natural History.
Well, only because they picked the
mean,
wrong
science.
color. Everybody knows the dinosaur was a certain gray that was a little different than the gray they chose.
They had feathers, by the way.
Because of all the skin we have left over from
It's a
dinosaurs.
beautiful
And the
story.
sound. Oh, yeah. The sound was a little more guttural than I expected because we all know how dinosaurs sound. It's so stupid. For me, that's like a million cuts when I walk into a museum. Because now, why should this bother Pastor Mucko at all? I'll tell you why. Because I was a university chaplain for 2 years. And the one thing that got in the way of Jesus more than anything else I saw of the students that came into that school in Victoria, British Columbia, was evolution. Because they live in a land called Canada where they believe everything is a glacier and everything is billions and millions and billions and trillions of years old. And they just believe that and so you're fighting a battle in Canada that was very unique to me. Because they start believing that everything is ancient. And I came to the realization through my own study, it's not so ancient after all. Moon, much dust, come on. They've been evaluating the moon, all the asteroids hit, it's supposedly there should have been this much dust. Little ladder come out of the lunar lander, it was supposed to land on the dust, instead it was a big leap down. And why? Because there was only this much dust, which might prove that the moon is maybe not as old as they thought, but let's not talk about it. Let's move on to something else.
Well, or just the lack of understanding that, I mean, even when Mount St. Helens blew up, when they did any carbon dating years later,
Oh.
it showed that this was an event that happened.
Oh, they had logs
Yeah.
that went down into into lakes.
Right.
They fossilized, they went in there and they checked them and they said, oh, these come out. And no, they came down. We got a picture of them coming down the mountain.
Exactly. I mean, so there's, the thought that you can't question science. And
No.
yet science is just a big question.
And we saw that with COVID.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, gosh. The arrogance of COVID was just strange to me. Like people, you had different doctors and they all went to the same medical school and they're saying different things, but we got to go with this one because they're the more scientific one. I'm thinking, man, this doesn't sound like science to me. This sounds like something else.
It's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Still isn't.
It's gonna take years to restore the trust in the medical profession because of that.
I watched Brett
Including
Baer
medical
this last week. He had
professionals.
all the people from Maha on there and they were all talking about, for years, our medical system has just taught people how to treat the symptoms and not how to go after the particulars. And that's been about 20 years out of our medical school that we got to bring that in. And it's big pharma has like jumped in willingly and said, hey, we got to do this, here's this.
Mostly that all that
I
started in the
heard
early
Dr.
1900s where everybody used, herbal medicine. And then eventually the Rockefellers and all these others kind of put, they paid and created all these medical
Sensors,
schools.
herbs, tinctures.
And they
Yeah.
paid these schools to train the doctors to only use pharmaceuticals made by man-made pharmaceuticals. So
Yeah.
eventually they weeded away all the herbal medicine people that used to just learn throughout
I know.
the centuries, right?
I know.
All the stuff that actually worked was healthier, and they pushed all these man-made medicine that was not healthy, just kept you barely alive, That's supposedly.
It's
I read
crazy.
into some of that.
No,
stuff.
I love conspiracies about anything, especially the medical community. But you're absolutely right. There has been so much wackiness that people, once they get this mantle of, oh, we're the scientists and they can just do whatever they want. Now it's like, whoa, man.
But they had hundreds of years to develop it, to
I know.
manipulate it into now everybody believes it.
But I think, like I said, I think COVID was a big wake up call to a lot of people that were just playing along and all of a sudden now their rights were being stripped away and they started looking at things differently. So some people, I see people walking around, I will never, I told y'all, I'm going to jail next time. I'm not gonna play. I'm just not gonna play. I'm gonna be part of the herd and the immunity. That's what and if I'm dead, I'm dead. I was wrong. Okay, but I'm going to heaven. I don't care. Okay, how does the Christian ethic give our critics reason to hate us today? I think Christians are intolerant, Christians are bigoted, Christians are narrow-minded, Christians are racist, Christians are this, Christians are that. I hear all this stuff all the time. This is why I don't share with people I'm a pastor when I first meet them.
Yeah.
Because I'm running into all that prejudice. I'd rather have them get to know who I am first,
Right.
and then have to run into their prejudices because of that.
Well, I think we reflect just how wrong they are, and that's why, when you're told and seen in a glaring way how wrong you are, you don't like that, and so you're more likely to I learned that a long time ago with my sister, actually.
Really? Please tell.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, one time she got really angry at me because I didn't park my, this was when I was a teenager, and I didn't park my car in a certain way, and so she came in all hot and bothered and yelling at me, and I was like, okay, and I didn't go back and attack, and as soon as I didn't attack, that made her even madder. So I was like, all right, it's a reflection of, you
Like
know,
heaping
all-
coals on your head. That's how the Bible
Yeah.
talks about it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
anyhow, so she got a lot angrier after that. I went, okay. And that was frankly more rewarding for me to see.
I had a good friend one time, and it was a good lesson for me. I was upset. And he turned to me and said, "Is that all you're upset about? What about this? Does this upset you too?" Just kept driving stuff in. That was just, he knew. And by the time I was like spent, I said, he goes, "Okay, we got it all out now." I thought that was cool. And so I try that all the time. It doesn't work. It doesn't work with other people who are not willing. Like, Sonia, I hear you're upset with me. Well, what about this? No, that's not gonna work this time. Okay, keep moving on. This radical love your enemies ethic from the Sermon on the Mount seems somewhat missing from churches today as compared to the early church, but is extraordinarily powerful in its impact on unbelievers. What would it look like if Christians put this into practice today? I was with a friend the other day, and we were having breakfast, and the friend was saying how I play a lot of golf, and I can't be friends with liberals. They just drive me nuts. It's driving me nuts. And I listened to this and I said, yeah, but that's why God wants you to be their friend, so that you can help one another in your thinking. Like, sometimes I don't know what really bothers somebody. I'm so insular in what I believe is the right thing. I forget about this side that's also involved, and that's this person's focused only on this side, forgetting about this. And when we come together, sometimes we can, I get a better view and a more reasonable approach maybe than the one I originally had. I'm not saying it always works that way, but I've had enough times where it has worked that way that I'm open to the idea of listening to somebody. Whereas I think a long time ago, I wasn't as open. Now, I really don't. I don't know everything. I laugh when people come to me with questions. I don't even know how to light the candles on Sunday morning. If you ask me, I was just like, because just light them. That's all I'm thinking. Just get them lighted and turn them out at the end of service, and I'm good. But there's supposedly some way you light it, but they gotta flip it around and take the flame, and I watch it, but every time I watch it, I get confused myself. And then what's funny is when Beth's not here, they ask me. And so they're gonna make a decision. It's usually the wrong one. Because I'm just going, so I'm rewriting the manual this summer to coincide more with Pastor Mucko. Because there's things we do here that don't make sense to me. They just don't make sense to me. They probably made sense to Pastor Wilmer or Pastor Johnson or Pastor so-and-so. But Pastor Mucko's been here long enough now that Pastor Mucko's gonna get quirky. And he wants some quirky things going on. So just something to think
Oh, you're
about.
asking for trouble.
What's that?
You're asking for trouble now.
I know,
Messing
I
with the
know.
circus, man.
I think one of the big things in our society today, and of course, it's always been there, but when you're with these divisions we have politically,
Ah.
you know, because you disagree with somebody, you don't have to hate them.
I know, and I don't know when I was a kid, I used to watch McNeil Laird NewsHour, and I used to watch there were two guys on PBS that used to combat each other all the time. Hannity and Combs did that on Fox early on, but I can't remember what it was. But there were two guys, and I used to love watching them. Even when I lived in Canada for those years, they were fun to watch because they took
Like
the
Neil
topics.
Lehrer NewsHour,
That was it. But they were the two guys. Was that their name?
like Neil Lehrer.
Yeah, they would argue with each other, but they were really civil, and it was really cool to watch. And we've kind of lost that. Everybody's grandstanding now. Everybody's trying to get that little soundbite, that little video
You want to
clip,
get reelected.
get reelected. It seems like as soon as, and I think that's all been exposed. You know, we don't know what to do with the information we have about our politicians that we've learned in the last 10 years, but it's been exposed, and it's sad to see how people put a lot of faith into politicians, because politicians don't really care about what you're doing, to be honest with you.
It's also the technology back in the day we didn't have, where everybody had a voice where they could just blast it out.
I know.
Back then, you know, you if you had a mic, you might be able to talk to a small community, but now everybody's voice reaches the world. and
Well-
Everybody has their point of view, so.
I know in
There's a lot more
Iraq, the Iraq
caution.
war, when the Iraq war happened, we thought CNN, it was so cool that, you know, they had 24-hour news coverage and all that. Well, then that 24-hour news coverage turned into a bait. Because now you can't turn off the information channels. And so everybody's an expert all the time, every day, every moment of the day.
Yeah.
It used to be, yeah, news was from this hour to this hour.
30 minutes, an hour.
Yeah, you had local news, you had national news, and that was it. Remember those days?
Now
Three,
you're just swamped with all this information coming in. You don't know
nowadays
what's
you
going
like that, and then you can buy your own little like special niches from your, you know, CNN or at Fox, you could buy special Fox Nation or CNN. I think tried theirs, but I think it failed miserably real quick. But you can go deeper into the news stories. I was even thinking of like Father's Day is coming up. I might get my dad Fox Nation for the year. Because I know that there's stories on that channel that my father would like pro-military stories, things like that my parents look forward to. My parents are the kind of people that every year around Christmas, they watch all the PBS specials, all the Christmas specials, they record them all. They watch them when our family comes there. Sonia's like, we get around the family and my dad says, hey, we should all watch this together. And we're all like, okay. Here we
No, it's
go."
not a we should, it's we're watching.
Yeah.
We should, yes.
Yeah.
That's not your dad.
I love the daughter-in-law's interpretation of events, because it's always a little more pungent than what I see.
Well, he and I are always trying to be boss.
It's hard to.
I think,
The admiral.
Sometimes I win.
okay, there's secularists today, they believe like the Greeks and Romans, you gotta achieve what glory of this life. But man, I'll tell you, my favorite activity as a pastor is funerals. It's it's my favorite activity as a pastor's funeral, because every bit of our theology comes together. The belief what Jesus did on the cross, the reason we die is because of sin. He went to the cross to take away our punishment, the resurrection, all of that. And then I've got the most willing ears I ever have out of any worship service I do. I have better listeners in funeral services than anywhere else. Everybody wants to know what happened to Aunt Helen, you know, or Grandma Dory or whatever. They want to know what's going on now. And then if I got a real captive audience and I get to do the commemorate, you know, if I get to do the committal, then I even share some more stuff there. And I make sure I make it, because I've got an audience, man, and I can teach them some stuff. One of the big things I always teach at funerals is I get rid of the Catholic premise that the people who have died are aware of what's going on in this world. Think about it, folks. Would you really enjoy your heaven if you watched all the dumb things that your loved ones were doing and you had no power to stop them? Aren't you glad as a parent, if you are a parent, that there are stories that you heard about when your kids grew up, finally were out of the house, that you were glad you didn't know about at the time? Maybe you've had some of those stories in your life that you're glad your parents didn't know about at the time, because they would have done everything in their power to try to stop you from your foolishness, and it would have upset them. Okay? And so I don't believe anybody in heaven knows what's going on a day-to-day basis here on this earth.
I just went through, attended a Catholic funeral. It's amazing to me how, you know, it's not very rewarding in your thinking in terms of.
That was a good Catholic funeral you went to. A good Catholic funeral will leave you at the end of the tether wondering, so is the person saved or not? A good Catholic funeral will require all of you that are there to continue praying for that person. This is what they believe your goal is. That's why you're there. Because your job is to continue praying for that person so that God hears over all the clatter and allows them to come into heaven. Because God forbid that Jesus did enough for their salvation. There's still more you got to do. And it's I get what they're doing. They're trying to keep a tether to the people in faith, and they're trying to keep them tethered to the church. But it's not appropriate. That's not the place to do it.
There's so much ritual that the priests have to go through that they lose sight of what it's all about.
Yeah, and the people who sit through it, which I had family members sit through it, they were like, what's going on here with the incense? I said, well, the idea is that God has olfactory nerves, because the scriptures talk about the sacrifice is going to the nostrils of God, that the idea is that you flood this person with enough incense. It's just one more thing that hopefully God will recognize that they're there and will bring them into heaven. It's as if the story of Jesus never happened. Like Jesus said on the cross, it is finished, it is completed. That's what the word means. It is done. And that all of our salvation was taken care of when he died on that cross. And resurrection shows that it was done. So now Jesus did everything. We give him all the glory, but that's not what we left. Okay, remember, we're Lutherans. We left this because Roman Catholics believe that you're baptized, you start, God did the starting, but now it's your job to finish it off. So make it to confession, make it to the sacrament, come to worship regularly. If you can, get one of the kids that you have to get in the priesthood or some church work, because that will give you a few more points along the way too. It's all of these things to help build.
We live that.
It's all of these things to help assure you of what Jesus really actually already should have assured you, that your salvation is certain. But the Roman Catholic way is that they want to keep you in the church because they've seen how people in other denominations, they flee. Like Lutherans, they get baptized and then they get confirmed and we don't see it again until they have kids of their own. And then they bring them back and then they do that little ritual again. I've got some of those this next year. I'm thinking about how to deal with that. Where the only time I see some of these kids, and I love these kids, is when it's time for confirmation. And so I see them 3 years and that's it. Bye-bye. And if they have no more kids in that family, I won't see them again until a wedding.
Is that why Catholicism or catechism is K through 11?
Is that right? What?
I went to
Yeah, it's yours is always to keep you
but I
tethered to
went
the
from
church.
K through 11. I didn't go 6, 7, and 8.
If you're Roman Catholic and you had
I'm just
kids,
asking,
the
is that
church
the
gave you
belief?
the option, not much of an option, you need to sign your kids over to the church.
I have clients that,
Or
she was
Roman
raised
Catholic church.
Catholic and he was raised Methodist. They got married. And they had to promise or commit to raising their kids in the Catholic faith. They didn't, but
Under what kind of punishment?
Yeah.
If you don't care to do what the church tells you to do, like, what's the punishment gonna do for you? I always laugh at that.
and also what, another thing I got to kick out of their Louisiana, something about she had to get permission to get married outside of her parish, but she had, but anyway, what ended up happening was there was a member of her family who was the priest person agreed to do their wedding ceremony.
Oh, yeah. So all those rules that somebody was trying to bring over
You have
here.
to pay to be, you
Because
have
this
to
is
pay to
just-
get married outside your parish. You have to pay you have to pay your priest and the other priest. I did that first marriage.
Man, I love that church.
That's
Okay.
what I keep telling Benjamin. He's dating a little girl that's Catholic and apparently very, very firm in her faith, her Catholic faith. And I said, you do know what that means if this goes anywhere. Yeah, I read about it. Yeah, I'm not sure I like that. I'm like, well.
What does that say,
You know,
Thomas?
I was born and raised as a Lutheran. Thank God.
Yep, good answer. All right, what else?
My parents, you couldn't have found a more staunch Lutheran in your life. Than what my parents were. You went to church every Sunday. You prayed every Sunday. You went home and had lunch.
What about-
Yeah, I miss Sunday
what
lunch.
about Monday through Saturday?
Yeah. Well, that's when you did all the sin to get to church again. Okay. We are former Catholics after all. Okay, so what other spiritual needs, whether the same or different from those of the ancient world, do people have today? I think I heard Mark Zuckerberg this last week say some pretty alarming stuff about creating AI to bridge friendships to people that don't have any. That's pretty disturbing. That we're already discussing the potential that you can have a friend be this AI and you don't
There's
need it.
already a movie been made about it.
I know,
yeah.
I know, I know.
Dolls that are-
But movies are one thing. Now it's Mark Zuckerberg, head of Meta, Facebook, sitting down and saying, this is what I see the future for. And usually he said people usually have 3 friends. We're made to have 15 friends. And that's his reason for pushing this out. Did anybody else see this interview?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not surprised you said that.
Yeah, Pastor Mucko loves to watch interviews. Okay, oh my gosh, time. Okay, let's stop with this one. Some Christians regret the Constantinian effect on the church, saying that making the church legally and socially acceptable has weakened and corrupted by making it worldly. Do you agree, or was the sudden openness to the culture of Christian influence a good thing? What'd you all think about that?
Both good and bad.
Yeah, it's like everything else. It's like a mixed bag. The church became complacent in some areas, but also eventually the gladiatorial games were done, which were just terrible. When Christianity first came into power, though, the gladiatorial games were on the rise because it was bringing a great change into the culture. And rather than change everything at once, Constantine thought it was expedient to keep some things still the same for a while. And so the gladiatorial arena became even more violent for a short bit right after Christianity came into power, and then it tapered off. It was because of an old man that jumped in the middle of the arena, and he's pretty much stopped the thing. I can't remember the exact story. It was a sermon illustration that came across long ago. Great one. But it was on its way out, but Christianity didn't stop it altogether. In fact, Christianity created worse situations for a while. Interesting.
I thought it was very interesting in here when they got talking about our ancestors. I thought, because both sides of my family were German. They came over, brought Christianity with them.
Mhm.
But Islam could have taken over Germany. Would I be meeting in a mosque this morning?
Yeah, that Tours, that Battle of Tours, that was. I don't think we've talked about that I couldn't remember talking about that as much. I'm a Virginia boy, so I talked about Jamestown and Williamsburg and all that. But that Battle of Tours, that was decisive. If the Muslims would have won,
Yeah.
everything that we're looking at now would be totally different.
They're still coming. They're still coming in.
I know.
Supposedly they're building a big city outside of.
I'm seeing it right down the street every time I go down Jack Rabbit Road.
The only thing we have to, in our minds, think about, well, somewhere along the way, through all those years, Christianity would have come my way.
City.
Well, in many of those countries, Christianity was there and Islam took over. And that's the problem. So, which is also helpful to us when we hear people say Christianity has to go to all the earth before Jesus can return. It already has. It's just part of those Christian territories were taken over by Muslims in the 6th century. Remember, Islam is not an old religion. It's not as old as Christianity. It's the 6th century this religion came into being. And yet, man, the violent aspect of it. They say 10% of Muslims are empowered to do a jihad at any time. Well, that 10% of 2.5 billion is 200.
That's a lot of
Wow.
That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. And we don't know, like I watch this place pretty closely because I take that road back home. I live right in Wortham over here behind Lazy Dog. And so I take this all the time. I'm seeing that there's new pipes going up and all of that I didn't see before. But I'll tell you what, on Friday night, that parking lot's packed over here. Totally packed.
Winston, on the side of Kingston, they got that huge monster. They're spreading all that, right?
And then
Yeah.
there's also building a street, the non-temple.
Well, okay, this might take more than 8 weeks. I'm not worried about that because I'm just looking at, but I think we need to talk about these issues too. And I think we need an avenue, but we're gonna make sure that we stick with Christendom along the way and we'll keep that the thread. So thank you for your time today. Let's close in prayer. And we didn't get half of done what I wanted to get done, which is kind of funny, but I'm just glad we got into what we did. Graciously, Father, we thank you. We thank you for giving us voices. We thank you for giving us an avenue to speak. We thank you for giving us a book to bring us together, not just the Bible, but a book that's current and cultural, a book that tries to bring Christianity into a focus, which we may not see right away. Lord, as we read this book, help us to do the work that we need to so that we can come to class with the joy that we are intended to. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So try to get through the next 2 chapters, 3 and 4. But if you don't, we're going to keep going with some of this. So I'm not in a huge rush. I just want to get through this. Okay, but 3 and 4 is what the assignment was for next week. My goal is to just read the whole book, so I would just feel free to read. Just keep going. Don't be shy.